I forgot to unmute my microphone just now, so you probably saw my mouth moving, but you weren't hearing anything. I'm sorry. Greetings, kings and queens. Happy Sunday, everyone. And welcome back to the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform. Thank you for being here. And today we are going to be doing part two of the attachment series. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That's what we will be tackling today. And I see we already have a few people in the chat section. Greetings, Queen Monique and Queen Saran. And I see King Gavin is here. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me for today's broadcast. So, as I said just now, today we are going to be talking part two of the attachment series. If there is anyone who is listening right now who did not catch part one of the attachment series, it's okay. Don't worry. The the live was recorded. All of the lives are recorded, by the way, and they are uploaded to the Always a Queen platform on Facebook. And you can also access them on the Always a Queen platform on YouTube. And just in case you didn't know, yes, we do have a YouTube page. Yes. So you can find Always a Queen on YouTube. So look us up, subscribe to the YouTube page, and you can watch and rewatch all of the broadcasts as many times as you want to. Okay, now I am going to assume greetings, Queen Lilith, and welcome. Um, I am going to just let anyone who is listening and who did not catch part one of the attachment series know what we spoke about in part one. Okay, so in part one, I covered what attachment styles are. I mean, we touched everything from scratch as if it was the first time anybody had ever heard of attachment theory. And we took it right from the very start, leaving no stones unturned. So it was a very detailed conversation around what exactly attachment theory is, what are attachment styles, how attachment styles are formed, and I will probably touch a little bit more on that today. I gave the names of the attachment styles, the four attachment styles that are discussed in attachment theory. Those styles are secure attachment style, anxious, preoccupied attachment style, the avoidant or dismissive attachment style, and the fearful avoidant attachment style, which is sometimes also referred to as the disorganized attachment style. So I gave the names of the attachment styles, and then we went into a detailed discussion on each one of these attachment styles, talking about exactly what they look like, what are the characteristics that you would manifest if you have a particular attachment style. What exactly it is like being in a relationship with someone who has a particular attachment style. We touched on all of that last time I came on, which was 2 Sundays ago, and we did part one of this attachment series. So I really encourage you to go back and have a look at it when you have an opportunity, because it really sets the the groundwork, the foundation for what we will talk about today in part two. Okay. And I am pretty sure that everyone who was here for part one of the attachment series probably took off and went searching on the internet, doing all kinds of little quizzes to try to figure out what their attachment style is. I actually received a couple of messages. I got some inbox messages and some WhatsApp messages from a couple of followers who were so they were so excited and maybe also a little bit triggered by what they learned from part one of the attachment series that they were like, I think I know what my attachment style is based on what I heard during the broadcast, but I want to be sure. So I'm going to go see if I can get a quiz or something and take a test. And so I had a couple of followers who did that and who reached out to me later on to tell me that the attachment style that they suspected they had based on the broadcast was actually accurate. And so now they have a better understanding of why they show up the way they show up in their relationships, which of course is super helpful. Because knowing why you behave the way you behave is really critical to helping you to change the behavior, right? So, um, Monique is asking, do you go live on YouTube as well? Yes. Yes, Monique. At the moment, as we speak, I am live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter at the moment, right now. So if you are not able to watch on Facebook for any reason, you can watch live on Facebook and you can also watch live on Twitter. All of the broadcasts are live streamed on those three platforms. Okay, and I let me just go ahead and put a plug in here and encourage everyone to go and follow the other Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platforms. I would really appreciate your support so that Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis can continue to grow and to expand its reach and be able to help as many people as possible. So, if you have not already, go and subscribe to the YouTube page. You can also follow Always the Queen, the Metamorphosis on Twitter. You can follow on TikTok. Always the Queen, the Metamorphosis is also on TikTok, believe it or not. So you can follow Always the Queen on TikTok and also on Instagram. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can access this content. Okay. So you don't have to be able to watch or listen on Facebook if you do not have a Facebook account or if you cannot access Facebook for any reason. All right. Good. So let's dig into today's topic, which is part two of the attachment series. Okay. So today, I want to start off by talking a little bit about the circumstances that lead to each specific attachment style. So last time we spoke about what each of the attachment styles look like. And we also did establish that most of the time, 99% of the time, your attachment style is established in childhood, very early on in childhood, as a matter of fact, within the first year of your life, your attachment style would have already been um, established based on the relationship that you have, based on the relationship that you have with your caregivers in childhood. Okay. So, um, most of the psychologists and sociologists who study attachment theory and who do this type of work are of the view that your attachment style is pretty much established between 7 and 10 months of age. By that time, you have an attachment style that is already manifesting, observable, meaning that if someone spends time with that 7 to 10 month old baby, they can already tell what type of attachment style this person has, right? And so it's it's I think important to include in this discussion what circumstances would have had to be around that baby. Like, what type of home, what type of parents, what type of relationship with the caregivers that that child has would lead to a particular attachment style. I think that that is something that everyone would definitely be interested in learning. And so I want to start the discussion with that today. What circumstances lead to each attachment style? So let's start with the anxious attachment style first. All right. Now, in children, this is referred to as the anxious ambivalent attachment style. All right. And children who develop this anxious ambivalent attachment style are children who typically have caregivers who are very inconsistent. They are unpredictable with their affections, meaning that the child does not know what they're getting from one day to the next. Today, they might be treated very well, and then tomorrow, they might be abused and neglected. The child does not know what to expect from one day to the other. And so those unpredictable parents and caregivers, people who are unpredictable with their affections, kind of set the tone for this anxious attachment style that children would develop. Um, Sometimes the parents may be overly involved, overprotective, even helicopter parenting a little bit, and then all of a sudden that over involvement disappears, and the caregiver withdraws, and the child is getting the exact opposite. So you can imagine the confusion that that would create for a child, and you can see why that would result in a lot of anxiety for the child as well. Okay, so this unpredictable fluctuation from one thing to the next, between the caregivers being emotionally available and then all of a sudden distant, that leads to the children becoming anxious about all of their future relationships, pretty much, because what is happening there is that they are learning that human beings are unpredictable in general, and so that attachment style that is established there is what is going to follow them into their adult life, meaning that these are children who are going to grow up fearing this unpredictability, that human beings tend to display, and it is obviously going to impact the future relationships that these children will have as adults. Um, so, what else would I like to throw in here? So basically, the point I am making is that this attachment style is associated with inconsistent parenting. That is the bottom line. Okay. So sometimes the parents are supportive, they're very responsive to the child's needs, they're ready to look after and to offer the affection that the child is seeking. And then at other times, they are completely misattuned with the child. It's like perhaps not a physical neglect. Well, sometimes it might be physical neglect, but sometimes the parents are physically present, but there is emotional neglect, which is also harmful to the child. And so this inconsistency really makes it difficult for the child to understand what the parent's behavior means. Like a baby is quite literally confused by this. Like they're literally trying to figure out, what is happening, and so the child ends up confused, and because of these mixed signals that the caregivers keep giving. Another thing that is linked to this anxious attachment style that children often develop is what they refer to as emotional hunger. And the emotional hunger is not coming from the child. Interesting. Catch this. The emotional hunger that is associated with the anxious attachment style in children is not coming from the child, but rather from the caregivers of that child. Interesting, very interesting. One would think that when you hear them talking about this concept of emotional hunger in the anxious attachment style, that it must be the child. No, in actuality, the emotional hunger concept teaches that it's the caregivers who have the emotional hunger. Mhm. And so the caregivers would be seeking emotional and physical closeness with the child in order to satisfy their own needs rather than satisfying their children's needs. Does that make sense? I hope I am communicating it clearly to you. Because that's a concept that usually throws people off. People are often like, wait, what? I don't understand. So the child has caregivers that are sometimes here and sometimes there, and the child is confused, but it's the caregivers who have emotional hunger. I do not get that. Some people get really confused. So that's why I want to make sure you grasp this, because this often throws people off. The emotional hunger is actually an issue with the parents or the caregivers, not the child. This is not to say that the child may not also have emotional hunger, but the emotional hunger of the caregivers is what often creates the issue, because these parents are then seeking emotional and physical closeness with their children in order to satisfy their own emptiness, their own need for emotional satisfaction, which may be coming from the fact that they themselves have an insecure attachment style coming from their childhood. Are you with me? Right? And so they are seeking from their children the emotional fulfillment that they should actually be providing to their children. It's a little backwards, but stay with me, right? So, parents like these, they might appear sometimes to be overprotective, like I said, helicopter parents. Sometimes they might even appear to be kind of intrusive in the way they deal with the children when they are going through these phases where they're seeking this emotional satisfaction from their children. They might they're basically using the child to satisfy their own hunger for love. Um, and maybe also to kind of present themselves in a certain light to give the impression that they are an exemplary parent, when in reality there are times when they can be the total opposite and completely emotionally neglect that child. Same parents, which is why this child develops this anxious, preoccupied, ambivalent attachment style, because the child literally does not know what to expect from one moment to the next. The child is legitimately confused by this behavior. All right. And it's important to point out that a child who is being raised by caregivers who fit these characteristics um, is automatically going to assume that this is how all human beings operate. That is going to be the assumption of a baby, because the baby's first exposure to human behavior comes from who? Its early caregivers, obviously. That's where its first exposure comes from. And so raising a child in a manner like that is automatically going to carry on a cycle, because it is a clear indication. It's a clear indication that these parents also have an attachment style that needs work. These are parents who clearly also have insecure attachment styles. We can't say for sure which one. They may also have anxious preoccupied attachment style. It may be the avoidant dismissive attachment style. Whatever it is, it's an insecure attachment style, and one insecurely attached human creates another insecurely attached human. Okay. I see Gavin is saying makes sense. Using the child to feed aspects. Oh, wow. Yes, I love this comment. Using the child to feed aspects of their lives that are missing. Yes. Yes. I could not have put it better. That is precisely what they do. And this is far more this is far more common than we think, actually. And so this is a circumstance that absolutely creates this anxious attachment style in children, right? And so I want to take a moment to say that adults who have insecure attachment styles, adults who have insecure attachment styles, ideally, and I am saying ideally because I know that we don't always, I know that we don't always, I'm sorry, I just got distracted. Yes, I know that we don't always have ideal circumstances when children come into our lives. I know that. I know that sometimes children come unexpectedly. I know that every child is not planned. And so I say, under ideal circumstances, it is good for someone to learn what their attachment style is. Be sure about how they are showing up in their relationships. And if they learn that they have an insecure attachment style, do the work that is needed to heal and to change their attachment style so that they can begin showing up more securely in their relationships rather than insecurely. And even if it's not that you're doing it to improve a relationship, just do it for you. Because ultimately, if you decide to become a parent, it is going to directly impact, and I mean directly impact, the attachment style that your child will develop as well. And you are, in creating a certain attachment style in your child, you are essentially setting the pace. You are laying the foundation for all of this child's future relationships. That is a big deal. That is a big, big deal. You want to be in a position to set your child up for success in life, not just academic success or professional and financial success, but you want to also set your child up for emotional and psychological and personal success. That is just as important as all of the other areas of the child's life. And one of the ways that you can do this is by checking your attachment style and making sure that you have done your work so that you can create and cultivate a secure attachment style in the children that you raise. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that in. All right, so let's move on to another attachment style. The next insecure attachment style that we touched on was the avoidant attachment style. All right. In children, this is sometimes referred to as anxious avoidant. Sometimes the names that the attachment styles are referred to in children may look a little different, but they refer to the same attachment style. So if you happen to be reading and you see it being referred to as anxious avoidant attachment style, it is the same as the avoidant attachment style that we refer to in adults. In children, it's often called the anxious avoidant attachment style. Same thing, same characteristics also. Okay. Now, what circumstances would create an avoidant attachment style in a child? Caregivers who are not responsive, caregivers who are dismissive and distant, caregivers who are consistently emotionally disconnected from the child, like they do not have the capacity or maybe even the desire to connect emotionally to other human beings, which is very, very common of people who have avoidant attachment styles. And we spoke about this in part one, so make sure to watch that if you did not. And so this does not go away when it comes to their children. The same way that they are avoidant with other adults, they will also do this with their children. And so these parents who are emotionally unavailable and emotionally disconnected from their children are the types of parents who would raise children who develop an avoidant attachment style as well. Okay. Um, Children who grow up under these circumstances would be, children who come to believe that their needs won't get met. Basically, it's they come to understand that the humans in their environment, even the humans who are supposed to be there to care for them, may or may not meet their needs. It could go either way. It could be 50-50. And so they come to believe that human beings are going to disappoint them, basically. And so the development of this anxious avoidant attachment style in children has a lot, it's directly connected to the emotional unavailability of their caregivers. And it's not necessarily that the caregivers are neglecting the child. Most of the time they're present, as in they are physically present, but emotional neglect does not necessarily mean that the parent is absent. The parent could be right there under the same roof with the child, but the child is still emotionally abandoned. And the harm to the child is just as bad, maybe even worse. I would argue that it might be worse, because to be emotionally abandoned by a parent who's right there in front of you, but who has absolutely no interest in meeting your emotional needs, that stings. That is painful for a child to deal with. I would argue that it would be easier if the parent was not actually there in the house. If the parent is physically someplace else and also emotionally abandoning the child, it might be easier for the child to swallow because the parent isn't right in front of me. But if the parent is right in front of me in the same room and also emotionally neglecting me, that's a hard blow for a child to deal with. And that is often the case with these types of parents. So it's not necessarily that they are not there, or that they have physically abandoned the child, or that they're not, maybe giving the child food and clothing and shelter. Like, those things are provided normally, but the emotional neglect of the child is the problem, because they're completely disconnected. I don't know how else to explain it. I hope I am communicating it clearly, but it is a complete emotional disconnect from the child that the child can obviously feel, and that has a long term impact on the child. And the more emotionally needy this child becomes, the more distant the parent becomes. This is the same thing that avoidant people do in adulthood. Try to have a relationship with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style, and this is exactly what they do. You can have a relationship with them, but it has to be a very superficial relationship. Everything has to stay on the surface. From the time you start to try to get deep and to dig in and to get into all the emotions and the mushy stuff, they are out of there. Like, they're not trying to do all of this deep, mushy stuff and all the emotional vulnerability and emotional connection. And no, they can do superficial. with you. From the moment the relationship starts getting serious and things start getting intense and emotions begin surfacing, this is the type of adult who will find a way to get out. They will find a way to exit that relationship. If there is no door, they will create a door and get out because they don't do the deep stuff. They stay superficial. As long as the relationship is superficial, you can get along with them just fine. This is typical of the avoidant attachment style. So just imagine being raised by parents like that. Think about that for a moment. And that is essentially what leads to the avoidant attachment style in children. Those are the circumstances that create that type of attachment style in a child. Okay, and like I said just now, the more emotionally needy the child becomes, because obviously the child is being emotionally neglected, the child is going to become more emotionally needy because they start getting desperate for that emotional fulfillment that a caregiver is supposed to provide. They want that affection, they need it, they crave it. All children do. It is something that is important to their survival as children and to their overall well-being and mental health and all of those things. And so the more needy that the child becomes, the more distant the caregiver becomes. So imagine that dynamic and what that would look like. They feel overwhelmed and they want to run away whenever they find themselves in situations where people are emotionally trying to draw them out and trying to get them to go into their feelings and all of this. And so they will, the more you push and try to get the emotions out, the more distant they become, the more emotionally unavailable they become, and the more you will suffer, obviously. And that is the case with children who are raised under these types of circumstances, right? And so the child expresses a need for closeness, but instead of receiving it, they get a door shut in their faces. The parents with um, children who become avoidant um, are children who will probably never learn how to fully articulate their feelings. These are children who will struggle to express their emotions. These are children who will bottle things up inside and not share if they have been hurt or traumatized. I'm sure some of these things sound familiar to you, and this is a sign that a child has already developed an avoidant attachment style. Okay, these children will also be the kind of child who are not interested in like a lot of displays of emotions from other children or even from adults. They don't want you to hug them. It makes them uncomfortable because they're not used to it. And you will wonder, like, what is wrong with this child? Why is this child like this? It's because he or she is not accustomed to that type of behavior, and what is not normative for the child is going to obviously be uncomfortable for the child. And so you will find that kind of behavior is common. And also it's interesting because the caregivers of this child would have been the ones who kind of really set the stage for that, because caregivers who are avoidant and who raise avoidant children can often even become angry. I mean, interestingly, they will even get angry um and cut a child off who they consider to be too emotionally needy. The child wants to, child always wants to come and cuddle up onto you. The child always wants to hug. The child always wants to be touchy and feely. There are some children who are like that. And this will actually make caregivers who are avoidant angry. Like they will get upset. They'll be like, listen, I'm not about this. I'm not about this life. And and they will cut a child's displays of affection off, and tell the children to, stop all of this softness. You need to toughen up, and basically instill in the child this misconception that displaying emotions means that something is wrong with them, that they are weak, that they are somehow inferior. Those misconceptions that a lot of human beings, adults in particular, have walking around today. Do you know people like this? I know a lot of people like this. People who truly believe, because they have been programmed to believe, that being vulnerable, that being in touch with their emotions, that being emotionally available, that expressing their feelings, and all of these things is a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're not tough enough, you're not strong enough. Does that sound familiar? I know a lot of people who deal with that. A lot of people. And this is something that is instilled from childhood in many persons and absolutely leads to this avoidant attachment style that we are talking about. Okay? All right. Now, let's skip down to the last insecure attachment style that we spoke about in part one. In part one, the last insecure attachment style that we touched on was the fearful avoidant attachment style. This one is also sometimes referred to as the disorganized attachment style. And there's a reason why. I'm not going to go into all of that. We spoke about that in part one. Let me send you one more time to go and watch part one if you didn't catch it. It's on the platform. You can watch it on YouTube. You can also watch it here on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook. Okay, so what circumstances would cause a fearful avoidant attachment style to develop? So, the type of environment that influences a disorganized attachment style involves a caregiver who is frightening, who is traumatizing. This is an environment that causes a child to live in a state of constant fear, in a situation where there is a lack of trust for other human beings. In early childhood, it would be a lack of trust for adults. And later on in life, it will be a lack of trust for humans in general. I am talking about situations where children are enduring severe abuse, various types of neglect, serious traumas. These are the types of situations that often lead to the fearful avoidant attachment style in children, and this typically follows them into their adult lives. All right. People, and I said this last week, people who have this attachment style are people who would usually have suffered some really serious traumas in their lives. This particular attachment style is considered to be the most difficult of the insecure attachment styles. It's considered to be the most complicated, the most challenging to deal with of all of the insecure attachment styles. This one. And it is seen to be that way, more challenging than the others because of the circumstances that lead to this type of attachment. Because like I said just now, we're talking about situations where children are living in settings where they are literally living with a deep sense of fear, like they literally are afraid, and they spend their days like that. Imagine living like that as a child, day in, day out. Like you feel like you're literally under threat round the clock. These are the settings that lead to the fearful avoidant attachment style. So, obviously, we're talking about situations where there is some serious trauma going on. Maybe a child who lives in a home with abusive parents, alcoholic parents, who may be violent. And abusive in various ways, children who have suffered sexual abuse and rape. I mean, children who have had to live through war zones, these types of really serious traumas that would have a child completely frightened and traumatized for extended periods of time, these are the types of settings that would cause fearful avoidant attachment in a child. I hope I'm coming through clearly. Okay, so it may be a home where or a setting where the situation is neglectful, abusive, and these children who live in fear for most of their childhood, like I said, they come into this belief that one, adults are not supposed to be trusted. And later on, they will just believe that humans in general are not supposed to be trusted. They do want to have close connections. It's not that their need for emotional fulfillment goes away, it does not go away. It's just that they don't trust the humans who are around them. And so they do have those needs. Those needs are very much alive and present, but typically they go unfulfilled because that person is too fearful to venture out and actually make themselves emotionally available because they're afraid that the person that they're making themselves emotionally available to cannot be trusted. And this is what you usually see when you meet these types of people as adults. They want to be close to you. They want the affection. They do. They crave the affection. They want it, but they also don't want it. It's like, I want it. I want to be with you, but I also don't want to get too close to you because I don't know if I can trust you. Because what if I give you my heart and then, you know, this type of scenario might sound familiar, right? This is the disorganized attachment style, also known as the fearful avoidant attachment style, and this is typically how it gets started in childhood. Okay, so like I said, this disorganized attachment style is typically a result of serious childhood trauma, or abuse, severe neglect, living in fear for extended periods of time during the child's early developmental years. These are the types of settings that would result in this fearful avoidant attachment style. Okay, so this is essentially what the circumstances look like around these insecure attachment styles that we have been discussing. I wanted to give you a general idea of what each setting that would lead to these attachment styles would look like. Now, I want to shift this discussion a bit and I want to talk about solutions because I cannot delve into a topic like attachment and unpack it so clearly for you and in such great detail and then just kind of leave you swinging in the wind, wondering, okay, so now I know what my attachment style is, and I also know why I have it because I know what type of setting I grew up in. So I have all the explanations for why I behave the way I behave. But now what? Now, what do I do now? Like, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, how do I fix this? What's next? Right? And so I don't want to leave you swinging in the wind. I want to give you the what next. Like, now what do I do? How do I fix this? Can I get a few tips on how to move forward with this? How do I change my attachment style. And I am here to tell you that you can indeed change your attachment style. So if having listened to these broadcasts, you have come to the conclusion that you most definitely have an insecure attachment style and you are seeing it showing up in your relationships on a daily basis, and you want to work towards having a more secure attachment style, I'm going to throw a few tips at you. Obviously, there is no magic in this. There is absolutely no magic. This is a process, not an act. And I know we would all like to believe that this is an act. It is not an act, it is a process. The first tip that I will throw at you is that you first need to identify what your relationship patterns are. You need to know what they are. Know how you have been showing up in your relationships over time. How would you know this? You might want to have conversations with other people in your life, specifically romantic partners, who can give you some insight into how you're showing up, because sometimes we do not see ourselves as well as other people can see us, and we do not often have the insight into our own behaviors that other people have. And so maybe a best friend might be able to tell you a couple things about yourself that you don't even know. A best friend, a mother, a cousin, a sister, who knows? Somebody who has regular interactions with you and who has been able to observe the way you show up in your romantic relationships, because this is where your attachment styles are at their A game. If you really want to see someone's attachment style, check out the way they're showing up in their romantic relationships. It's a giveaway. If you cannot tell, that is where you will be able to figure it out. How is the person showing up in their romantic relationships? Your attachment style will expose you completely in your romantic relationships. If you're able to hide it anywhere else, you will not be able to hide it there. And so it's a good idea to have have some insight into how you are showing up. What are your patterns? What are your regular patterns that you keep repeating in your relationship? Start thinking about that. Start thinking about the relationship that you had with your parents as a child. Also, that is really helpful. It gives you, it is going to help you to start identifying those patterns. Because when you start thinking about these patterns, you will realize that the patterns did not start in adulthood. You will realize that these patterns date all the way back to your relationship with your parents. And so that's the first tip that I want to give you. Identify your relationship pattern. Start by thinking about your relationship with your parents as a child. How were they toward you as a child? How did you respond to them? To whom did you go for comfort when you had a problem? These are good questions to ask yourself. Were they neglectful? Were they reliable? Did you trust them? Or were you a child who grew up in fear all the time? These are all questions to ask yourself and really self examine, right? This will help you to get more clarity on what may have shaped your attachment style and help you to start identifying the patterns that are showing up. Okay, so that's the first tip. Tip number two. Tip number two is get in touch with your real needs. Get in touch with your real needs. Now, what do I mean by that? At the end of the day, all insecure attachment styles are people who tend to form insecure relationships. Why? Because of deeply held fears and needs that were never met. And they often go into these relationships with preconceived notions already that these relationships are not going to work out, that these relationships are going to hurt them. And if you're already coming in with that in your head, you are setting yourself up for sabotage. So it is so important before you even venture into a relationship to figure out how to make yourself feel more secure in your relationships. What are the needs that you have unmet that need to be met, and work on those things? Do not go into your relationship thinking that it is the relationship that is going to resolve your attachment issues. The relationship will not resolve your attachment issues. What it will do instead is exacerbate your attachment issues. I hope that makes sense. So you need to know exactly, it's like you need to know exactly where your sore points are. What exactly are your sore points? Is it fear that people are going to hurt you? Is it emotional unavailability? Is it what exactly is your specific point of need that you are afraid is going to get exacerbated and therefore causes you to self-sabotage when you enter relationships? This is something for you to sit down and think of. This involves you being very self aware, know what your needs and your desires are in a relationship. And of course, once you know what your needs and your desires are in a relationship, this will require for you to be assertive in your relationship. It's going to, and when I say be assertive, I mean don't be a settler. Don't settle. Honor what you feel. Once you know and you are clear about what you feel, honor what you feel. Express your needs. Do not allow yourself to be manipulated. Don't hide what you're feeling because you're so used to people disappointing you. Don't go in there thinking, oh, well, it has never worked out in the past, so this one probably isn't gonna work out either. So I'm not even gonna really, I'm not set myself up for disappointment. You know what I mean? If you're going in with that, you are essentially bringing a self-fulfilling prophecy to life in your own life. Don't do that. Securely attached people are direct. They are assertive. They know exactly what they need and they speak to it. They articulate it. They are clear communicators. And this comes from the fact that they are very self aware. They have taken the time to self examine and they know exactly what they need. They know what their triggers are and they have worked on those things and they know exactly what they need in a relationship and from a partner. And so they go in from that perspective. They don't go in there thinking, I'm not going to get what I need anyway. So what's the point of this? Mm-mm. They learn to advocate for their feelings and their emotions and honor the space that they are coming from. Even if they realize that the space they are coming from is a space of pain because they have a past that they are healing from, they are going in there with the intention of fully honoring that and requiring that the person that they are with honor that as well. You are not going to re traumatize me. I will not allow you or anybody to re traumatize me. And so you have to enter from that perspective. Okay? Hope I'm making sense. So that's my second tip. Third tip, I'm giving you 4 tips and then it's a wrap. Okay? So tip number 3. This is a really important one. Catch this. Work on your self-esteem. You cannot develop a secure attachment style unless you work on your self-esteem. Self-love. Self-love is key. There is no secure attachment style without self-love. Let me just self-love. If you do not love yourself, what secure attachment style are you going to develop? Like, how does that even work? It doesn't. Work on your self-esteem. I did a whole series on self-love recently on this platform. If you didn't catch it, when you have a chance, go watch it. I think it was 2 parts to the series. There's a part 1 and a part 2. When you have an opportunity, check it out. I think it will be, you'll find it very, very insightful. And that is an excellent place to start if you are trying to develop a secure attachment style. Okay? Work on your self esteem. This is a common issue across all of the insecure attachment styles. They all have self love, self esteem issues. Learn to embrace and to value and to love and to care for yourself. It is key. This is a critical component of secure attachment. Okay? If you are struggling, if you cannot fathom the idea of loving yourself completely and fully, because maybe this is just not something that you are accustomed to, this is a foreign concept to you. If you're coming from a background where you were neglected or abused or dismissed as a child, and you feel like you don't even know where to start, you can start by going and watching those videos on self-love. I break that down for you step by step by step. Go back and have a look. It is going to help you to start building self-tolerance. It will help you to learn to forgive yourself and to have grace and compassion for yourself, knowing that you are not perfect, but you're still a masterpiece because God made you. Understanding that you are a person who deserves to be valued. And this is a process. Like I said, this is not magic. This is a process. So that is the third tip. Work on your self-esteem. The final thing, and I have to throw this in because why wouldn't I? Don't be afraid to get help. That's the last tip. Don't be afraid to get help. If you are struggling to do this by yourself, if you catch the tips and you watch all the videos and you're still struggling, do not be afraid to ask for help. Seek help. There may be someone who can help you, who can guide you along the path if you are struggling to walk the path by yourself and you feel like you just need someone to lean on while you're walking the path. Sometimes you feel like you're struggling, you feel like you're going to fall down, and you just want to know that somebody is there to hold you up, to catch you. When you stumble, get help. There is no shame in seeking help. It is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is a sign of strength. When you are able to come out and say, I can't do this by myself. I need somebody to help me. I need somebody to walk with me. I am not going to be able to make it on my own. If you're struggling, do not be afraid to seek help. See a therapist. If you don't want to see a therapist, speak with someone who you know can help you, who has insight that they can offer, wisdom. But the point is, don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Do not be afraid to ask for help in this process. Okay? And that is where I'm going to leave it for today. All right. So this brings us to the end of the attachment series. Once again, this was a 2-part program. And if you did not catch part one, it is recorded. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on the Facebook platform at your convenience. I encourage you to download the videos if you want to, share them far and wide. If you have family, friends who you think need these messages, share the messages. It will cost you absolutely nothing to share this with someone. It could change somebody's life, right? And isn't that what we're here to do on this platform? This is our way of changing the world, right? And so I encourage you to share. I see Dee. Welcome, Dee. Sorry I'm missing this. Looked more into my attachment style and want to change it pronto. And I'm with you, sis. I am with you. And you know how to reach me. So if you need any help on the journey, call a sister up. I got you. All right. Let's have another look at the comment section before we wrap up. Heather Durham, welcome, Queen. Women of my generation were socialized to hold everything in and not ask for help. I know this to be true. I know this to be true, but I tell you what, we are here to break these cycles. We are the cycle breakers. The cycle breakers are us. That's what we are here to do. I like to remind women on this platform and women wherever I speak that the work that you do on yourself is not just for you. You benefit from it, but when a woman heals herself, she heals all the generations that come from her. This is not just for you. And so we are the cycle breakers. If it runs in the family, then this is where it will run out. The next generation is going to be the breakout generation. They are going to be the ones who will fearlessly say, I need help. They are going to be the generation that is fearlessly going into therapy to work through their childhood stuff. And I dare say the next generation is going to have less childhood stuff because they would have less trauma being passed on to them because we are doing our work. This is sacred work, queens. This is serious business, so let's be about it. Let's be the cycle breakers, right? Let's be the ones to change the generations that come. This work that you do on yourself is not just for you, it's for your children and your children's children and their children and all the generations that will come from you who will not have these vicious toxic cycles being perpetuated in their lives because you made a decision to cut it off here. And I will tell you in advance, I'm proud of you. Proud of you. I'm proud of you for being here, and I'm proud of you for committing to do this work because it's hard work. Heart work, as I like to say, is hard work, but so worth it. Totally worth it. Welcome, King Ikenly. This is extremely interesting. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm happy that people are really taking this in. I am going to have to re-listen to part 1 and 2 again. Very informative and educational. Thank you so much for being here. I am happy that that you have found this insightful. And I'm also happy that you can go back and listen to it as many times as you need to. Do that and share it too. All right. So, one more comment. And when you seek and get help, it is relieving to know you're not alone. Then, when you are helped, remember to help somebody else. I think that that is an excellent note on which to close. I love that, Jamina. That is an excellent note on which to close this broadcast. Yes, because that is what we're here to do. We're here to help. We're here to change lives. So I want to thank every one of you for being here today for this live broadcast. Thank you so much for your continued support of the Always a Queen platform. The Always a Queen platform would not be here if it were not for the followers. I mean, there is no Always a Queen platform without the followers. And so I want to thank you so much for your continued support. I want to encourage you once again to support all of the Always a Queen platforms: YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We are on all the social media platforms. So wherever you have an account, be sure to follow us so that we can inspire you all over the internet. All right. And this is where I will leave it for today. And so, as usual, I leave you with love and light. I will be back at the same time next week, Sunday, with another very interesting conversation. You will see you'll see a little flyer floating around some point during the week, which will let you know what we're going to be chatting about next Sunday. But in the meantime, be a beautiful week. Bye.